Hi. Have you ever set a deadline or a goal and probably for like a big project, multiple months, maybe even a couple years, and you've been working and struggling and trying to meet that get deadline and you're doing everything you can to meet it and it's not going to happen. Yeah, the team's frustrated, nobody wants to work on it. The milestones aren't being met. It's a slog. You're probably the person, if you're leading this, especially if this is a supply chain project that you're leading, you're the one who is pushing everybody to get everything done. You're pulling your hair out. People don't understand the nuances of why, if you wait just a minute, we could lose months. Yeah. Is that how you're feeling right now? You got something like that going on? All right. Well, come on in, have a seat, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about it. Welcome to my podcast, Supply Chain Wake Up. I'm Kimberly Reuter, business advisor and supply chain expert. And I am here to help you figure out what the hell you're doing with your supply chain. So come on. I'm actually in this situation right now. So I've been working on a project. You guys know I'm working on an oyster startup. Super excited. You know, I love building these ground up things, especially in the seafood industry and helping my Virginia watermen whenever I can. And, we had a real aggressive goal. We wanted to be launched by Thanksgiving, which was about an 8-week ramp. And to give you a sense of what this would have involved, this is like from dust, scratch. No brand, no logos, no colors, no website, no nothing. All wholesale, 135-year-old business, right? So we were excited to try to meet this goal. The web dev team and I felt like we could do it. The company signed on board and we started running for it. And as you all know, 8 weeks from scratch to delivery is pretty aggressive. Probably would have been the fastest I would have ever developed, to be totally honest with you. And guess what? About 2 weeks ago, it started looking like we weren't going to make it. And started getting real pissy. I started getting real angry, just edgy about everything because we weren't going to make this goal. And the client started feeling it. The company started feeling it. Because, of course, when I'm not happy, they're not happy. That's how it works. So we keep kind of working on this, and it increasingly is becoming obvious that we're not going to land all the planes to launch by Thanksgiving. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to make Thanksgiving. By the way, while I'm recording this, Thanksgiving is like 2 days away, 3 days away. So I'm not going to make it. So we understood that and we said, okay, fine. And I was like, but we still got to make it by the holidays. Like, I'm just going to really dig into this. I really want to get launched by the end of the year. Like, we're going to make it happen. And so I said, okay, fine. We're going to reworked all the numbers. And I said, we can launch by 12/12. And the client was like, well, 12/12 is kind of like in our busy time, and we're not sure that works for us. And of course, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, when we met 3 months ago, this is what we were going to do, and this is what you wanted, and da 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 da, and this, that, and the other, and yada, 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 yada. And they're like, well, that's a really busy time. That's what they keep saying. This is our really busy time. This is our really busy time. This is our really busy time. And it is a really busy time. They do most of their business this time of year, which is why we were trying to launch the DTC business. But here's the thing. It didn't make the client happy. It didn't make the company happy. And when we sat down and we looked at it and we said, well, why are we running for this date? Well, because we said we would. And we thought there was an opportunity to capture market share during the busy peak season. Not a lot, but it would get us out there. That's what we thought we were trying to accomplish. And that's what we were working on. And so that changed because we weren't going to make the date. Me continuing to push and 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 push to try to meet a deadline to launch this year, the value of that was starting to decrease rapidly. So we were going from a situation where there was value in getting this out there, try to capture some market share, get that holiday business. There was a reason for it. And every week that the launch slipped, for good reason, by the way, none of this was out of control. It's a very custom high-end product. It's taken a lot of touch to get this thing up and running. So none of it was bad. But the value of continuing to push forward was diminishing quickly. And the company knew it. And I was a little slow to realize it because I was wrapped around that deadline. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today is when do you pivot? When do you objectively, and we're going to talk about the objective part here too. You cannot use this as an opportunity to hide your lack of ability, okay? But when there's an opportunity to objectively move a deadline that will offer potentially more value, how do you know when that's happening and what do you do about it? Because if you're leading supply chain projects, especially if you're either building big ones or rebuilding broken ones, you probably are on a timeline and you're trying to manage a project and you're doing the very best that you can to get it out there. And I get it. Okay. So, what do you need to do to make that happen? Okay. First and foremost, you have set a goal or been given a goal or been set a deadline, given a deadline for a variety of reasons. Now, let's first of all talk about the deadline and the goal because you need to know if you can change it before you do change it. Okay. So, first and foremost, you need to know if your goal or your deadline is a dependency. Okay. And what that means is that if you don't deliver, then it means somebody else can't deliver. So if you miss your goal, it means somebody else is going to miss their goal. So it's the first thing you have to recognize, or are you a dependency? And if you are, then you need to think real hard about what's going on and you need to talk to your other partners about what you missing your goal is going to do to their projects, okay? If you are a dependency, you can't just slip your goal. You got to make sure everybody else is okay. All right. Because you are impacting other people around you. So that's first and foremost is that before you decide to slip a date or move a date, you have to make sure that you are not a dependency. Okay. So how do you know that maybe you need to slip a date? Okay. And you need to proactively adjust your project. You will start to feel like you're pulling your hair out. It's not moving forward. And I know I talk a lot about feelings in this podcast and intuition and knowing when something's not right. After 30 years of doing this stuff, let me tell you, your body knows before your mind knows. Okay. So if you're working on a project, you're getting, and this is what it will feel like. It'll feel like, oh my God, we're chugging along. We're making it. We're making good progress. This is unbelievable. And then it'll be like a screeching halt and it'll be, oh my God, what happened? Okay. So when you start feeling like that, when that is a signal that there's something wrong with the project and potentially you're either moving at the wrong speed or in the wrong direction. And today we're talking about speed. Okay. Because that's part of the pivot. So when you get to that point where the project is not moving forward, other people that you are dependent on can't deliver their work. That's part of that dependency conversation. Hopefully they have told you about that and you didn't discover it at the last minute. And it's very important to know if you're going to pivot that you start communicating it right away. That's very important. But this is how you know it's not going to make it. You're not meeting your milestones. You're probably burning through resources and your dependencies are not coming through. The project's not going to make the deadline. All right. So you have two options at this point. Option one, and this is my preferred go-to option. I'm going to be honest with you. It's my default. Push through, work harder, keep going, slam everybody's face into the ground and make them work harder. Like that is how my initial reaction is always going to be like, do it more. That's my default. Yep. Just grind everybody's nose into the sand and just grind everybody away. We can do it. Just push harder. That is always my default. Now that has worked for me for a long time and I have accomplished amazing things doing that with that attitude, but it comes at a price and it isn't always necessary. Okay. Because the client or the customer or the project doesn't always necessarily warrant that. It's not necessary. When I worked at Amazon, it was necessary because everything's delivery date was yesterday. So that's how it worked. I was kind of born and raised that way. It played right into all my defaults. It was beautiful. My default is always push harder, more pain, more better. That's how it works. Okay. That is option number one. Caution here. Okay. Option number one is only for situations where you do have to meet that deadline. Like you have a dependency, you have a financial dependency, you have a dependency of another team, you've made a commitment to the market, whatever it is. Sometimes we're going to have to do a little blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. Okay. That is my default. I'm not saying that is the right default. Default number two, or answer number default, or option number two, not default number two. Option number two is we reevaluate. Okay. 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 We ree We reevaluate. We take a knee, we pause, and we reestablish. So that is option number 2. And that is always the smarter option. And to be totally honest with you, you may go with option number 2 and still end up with option number 1. But you should probably always go with option number 2 first. Don't go with the Kimmy default unless you're in Kimmy mode, and then power to you, baby. So option number 2 is to pivot, is to take a moment. What are we doing? Are we on the right path? Are we moving at the right speed? Is this still what we need to do? Okay, so this is what this looks like. Number 1, and we have talked about this a couple million times. If I'm still repeating this, you haven't been paying attention. What was the outcome or goal of the deadline? Why did you set the deadline to begin with? What was the purpose of the deadline? Okay, the goal, whatever it was. Typically, this is a deadline. Launch by a certain date. I call them deadlines. Other people call them goals. For the love of God, there's a gazillion other names of them. Please don't take me there. Okay, so what do you know? What happens when it's becoming very obvious that you are not going to make it? You're not going to hit the date. Number 1, what was the goal? What were you trying to accomplish? Was someone else dependent on you? Was there a financial outcome? Why were you doing this? What was the actual purpose? Okay, so first you have to revisit that. If I don't meet this date, will something break? Will we not meet a goal? Will we have to tell the street something other than we did? Will somebody else's team break? What will happen if I don't meet this goal? That's the number 1 thing you have to look at. And you have to make sure that you're not breaking something else by slipping your own date. I cannot express that enough. I cannot tell you how many situations and how many arguments I've gotten into people where they're like, we ain't going to make it. I'm like, well, I ain't going to make it either now. So guess what? We both have to go talk to my boss. So number 1, what, why, how, what are the dependencies? What's going to happen if you don't meet this date? Is it the end of the world? Will you not meet your goal? Or if you aren't going to meet the goal, how much is the goal impacted versus the cost of pushing through? Let's use my oyster company as an example. We're not going to make it for the holidays. Continuing to push these guys through it to try to get us out for the holidays, there isn't a lot of benefit. We would get maybe a little market share, maybe, $10, $20, $30,000 in orders, but it's not worth the price. Okay. Because we're still going to meet the goal. We're still going to meet the goal. This was a nice to have. The project did not depend on this. Okay. So me continuing to push forward with this and saying, we got to get out by the end of the year. We got to get out by the end of the year. We got to get out by the end of the year. There was no dependency. Nothing was going to stop. We weren't going to lose the business because of this. It was a goal that we had set that was a nice to have goal. It was not a hard goal. There were no dependencies on it. You know what's going on with your goal, what's going to happen if you're going to slip it. So number 2 is you have to communicate that the goal is slipping. So back to my oyster company, we've talked about it. We have said, hey, this is a really busy season for our wholesale. We don't want to risk our wholesale business trying to get this thing in here for, $10,000 or $20,000. It's not worth it to us. No problem. We're going to slow our roll, still moving forward, just a little slower. We're going to take our time to do some of the stuff that we were going to probably end up doing twice because we were moving really fast. We're going to get it all nailed and out the door perfectly this time versus doing a couple of iterations trying to move really fast. So in this situation, we are slowing our roll. In your situation, once you've identified that you're not going to meet your goal, you have to go communicate to your bosses and to the other teams that are impacted, even if they are not hard dependencies. You have to communicate it. Okay. So just like we just did, this is a micro example of it. We discussed it. What's the benefit? What's the harm? What do we want to do? And that's where we are. And so we made a decision. That is what you have to do in order to change a date and pivot. You have to communicate it. It is number 1. Number 2 is in that communication, you need to know when the new date is going to be. We're going to pivot and we're going to shoot for whatever, January 1st. We're going to be 2 weeks behind. Whatever it is, you have to come up with an answer on where it is that you are going to be when you meet. What's your new goal? You gotta communicate the new goal. And the last and most important thing is you have to communicate why the pivot was important, why we pivoted. This is back to my original comment when we first started, is that this is not an excuse for laziness. This is not an excuse for we didn't get our job done. And so we just ain't going to get it done. Sorry, that's just how it works. Like maybe is not an answer. Okay. So you have to go in and you have to have an explanation on why we're missing the date. We are missing this date because we didn't fully understand the business requirements and did not fully scope out the tech requirements as a result. Legit reason to move a date. In the case of my oyster company, we just could, you know what? We're doing some amazing boxes. The printing is taking longer than we thought. And to be totally honest, mobilizing people this time of year during the holidays, good Lord, that's an extra 30% effort right there. And it also is their biggest time of year for wholesale. They don't have the mental capacity to work on it right now. If we could have gotten this launch before Thanksgiving, it could have worked. But now it's taking away from their business, not adding to their business. So that is why we're slipping it. So you have to be able to go to your dependencies and your leaders and say, we're pivoting. We're not going to make the goal. We're going to go in this direction, or we're going to slip our date, whatever it is. We're going to slow our roll. We're going to change our date, whatever the situation is. We're doing this because of this. And this will be the outcome of it. This is what we may lose. But more importantly, and listen to me, this is why I want to talk to y'all about this. This is what we will gain. Almost always, if you pivot or change your deadline for good reason and you do your due diligence, it's for the good. It's not, again, back to my comment in the beginning, because we're lazy and we don't want to do our job. It is because there's a benefit. So back to my oyster company, the benefit is we can hit this thing full on in January. We may be able to slip in a little soft launch in December. I'll let y'all know if there's out there. But if we can't, the benefit is that we're going to have a much better presence when it actually goes live. And we're really excited about that. So there's a benefit to it. A benefit for not meeting a deadline for a tech deployment could be that we need to launch on a new server that's coming, or we want to wait until we've rebuilt the stack, or we're going to build it in a new language and we need somebody else to do that first. Whatever the reason is, there's usually always a benefit for a pivot. So make sure that you communicate that. All right. So just to recap for you guys today, and this is an important one. When do you pivot? How do you pivot? And what do you do when you need to pivot? If things aren't working, you're not going to meet a goal. Don't just grind away on a date because you said you were going to get there. If it's becoming obvious that it's not going to happen, pivot. Communicate, make sure you don't have dependencies, but don't just grind away on something just to grind away on something. It's a waste of resources and it is not good for your soul. I can tell you, I have done it. So if you're grinding away, it's not working, that's when you know that you need to have a pivot. You need to identify if you have dependencies. If you do pivot, are you going to hurt somebody else if you pull your pole out of the tent, right? Long pole in the tent. Are you going to collapse the tent if you do that? You need to understand what you're pivoting to and what that means, and then set the new date and our goals. And of course, you have to communicate that to everybody that you are doing this and why. What is the benefit of it? And if there's not a benefit to it, you probably doing it because you ain't doing your job. All right. That is the pivot. That's why you need to pivot. That's how you pivot. And that's when you pivot. And that's how you own the pivot. All right. That's what I got for y'all today. That's me. Peace out.